Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Bog Panda. I'm Kelly at KELLYTHUL on all social media. I don't really know why I'm here because it's the Dr. Mike show. We're going to talk about Nintendo 64. Maybe I'll say a few things. But joining me as always,
I am Dr. Mike at Official Pagan on everything. Um, I guess I'm probably on Z or whatever it's called as well, but on everything, that's how you can find me. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, leave a comment, and just between us, with your free subscription, we're going to throw in a free subscription to the world's shortest podcast, Hard No. You're going to like that podcast so much, you're going to head over to our merch store. You're going to buy some merch because you're going to wear some of our t-shirts and become a walking billboard for us. Then come back and leave some more comments telling us how comfy those t-shirts are. You know you want to.
seems perfectly fair. Tonight, um, we are going to talk about Nintendo 64, a territory that I used to own exclusively in the podcasting relationship.
Very much so.
And but no longer. And so thought we'd visit a little bit on Mike's journey into the cutting edge technology of the Nintendo 64. So take it away, Mike.
Been pretty interesting. So first and foremost, for all of our drink cucks out there, it is Halloween night that we're recording this. So I not only have a pumpkin beer, it's a caramel pumpkin beer.
Ugh. Ugh.
Caramel pumpkin is a natural flavor given to us from the earth.
Where's in nature? Sure.
Completely natural. Yeah, so Kelly has always been the Nintendo 64 guy of the duo here. I know what Nintendo 64 is. I played it a handful of times, but never been a Nintendo 64 guy. I'm vaguely familiar with some of the issues that they had with it, but I was a PlayStation adopter at that time, so as a lot of people were. So never delved too much into it. Played GoldenEye at a couple of friends' houses. Played Mario Kart once or twice. That's it. That was the the beginning and end of my Nintendo 64 run. Ironically, not long ago it was announced that a company is releasing a Nintendo 64 that's HDMI enabled and all that stuff. One of these third party companies that you can play cartridges on. Um, I have been trying to get some good emulator stuff going, mostly because my wife was a big Nintendo 64 fan and she misses playing GoldenEye and some of those other games. She's old enough to be nostalgic for those now, and her Nintendo 64 is now essentially our niece's Nintendo 64. It was hers and her sister's. Her sister took it when she moved out. My wife isn't a big gamer. And now that our niece has sort of adopted it and is getting into it, of course, all the nostalgia is flooding back for my wife. And she wants to be able for our niece to play it when she comes over here and we can all play together and things like that. So I was looking into emulation options, and the problem is the emulators are still kind of spotty for that. And a lot of it, as Kelly had mentioned on the show before, controller mapping is a big problem. The Nintendo 64 controllers are weird, so that's a thing. And even if you can map it to the controller, and this is some of what I've been learning as I did some research into this. Most of the games use a low resolution mode that you could switch to a high resolution mode if you have the expansion pack in. Obviously, now you're emulating an expansion pack on top of it and trying to map a controller. Some of the games required the expansion pack to either play the game at all or play most of the game. And then there was issues with compression with it. So Nintendo, from my understanding and what I've read with it, the reason Nintendo 64 wasn't as dominant for the first time, Nintendo wasn't the dominant force, is because they stuck with cartridges. They were concerned about load times and also piracy, so they stuck with cartridges, but they made the cartridges very small in what they could hold. By the end of its life, the absolute largest cartridges that you could get for Nintendo 64 were 64 megs, which is not much more than Super Nintendo and Genesis cartridges were doing near the end of their life. They were getting into the 40 meg range. So that's very small. especially when you're going up against CD-ROMs on every other system that could hold 700 megs on a CD-ROM. So a lot of their big partners dropped them completely, which is how they lost Final Fantasy VII to PlayStation and things like that. So the games required tons and tons of compression in order to fit them onto these small cartridges. So again, that's another issue for emulators, apparently, trying to decompress all this stuff in this 90s compression that was put onto it. So add to that, there is absolutely no way that my wife is going to sit there and map out a controller on an emulator, let alone a 5-year-old sit there and map out a controller and troubleshoot the emulator when things start glitching and things like that. I barely want to do that. There's no way I'm going to explain to a 5-year-old that they have to do that. So it was becoming clear I needed to seek out a physical Nintendo 64 for them to be able to use. And luckily, Kelly's the expert on this stuff, so he was able to kind of guide me and be my Sherpa up the mountain of Nintendo 64 as far as what I needed to get started. Now, what would you say for somebody watching this who, like me, is brand new to this? What are they looking for?
So expansion pack is key because that when they ended up starting to do it, and I don't really know the percentage of games, but they're the later games. But Donkey Kong 64, when it came out with 1 billion items to collect through all the different types of.
Yeah, what is the deal? We need to get into this at some point because I never played that game. That's not one of the games that I picked up for it, but every review of it, just so much of it is dedicated to this item collecting in this game.
Yeah, it goes to it was the main direction. So they'd always talk about George Lucas, and the early Star Wars direction was always faster, more energy, faster, more energy, and the kind of ringleader for Donkey Kong 64 was more items, more items. We're going to have the most items ever, and I think there's a chart out there somewhere that kind of talks about a variety of games and the number of items, and so it's like the rest of the world, and then Donkey Kong 64. It's ridiculous because you could collect them as the different characters, and the bananas could change color. It was just insane. But also just the breadth of the game required. They were not going to be able, as they built the game, they're like, this isn't going to play with the onboard memory. Now they were smart, and they did have an expansion pack slot in the 64. So when you bought your Donkey Kong 64, you received a expansion pack with it. They actually shipped the game with the expansion pack, not a lot more than a new Nintendo game. And so that's always the key. Expansion packs key important. The little tool to pop the expansion pack out, handy too, in case you ever have to replace it. That piece as well. The biggest thing if you're buying gently used or refurbished is the controllers, is to kind of make sure you get those. I always liked the controller. I know it was very different than other things, but I liked the controller. But it had its frailties. One, they didn't survive a toss very well, as I learned from my nephews, because things didn't go well. I was down a controller because they tossed it and it was done. And then the joystick in the center, if you were a little energetic with it, easy to snap, very easy to snap. So it's finding good controllers, making sure you get the expansion pack, is probably the biggest things. Then of course, just from a game selection, making sure get GoldenEye, and in my opinion, get Snowboard Kids somehow. Those are two biggies there, but yeah, and I wish I had seen it more recently, but I know at one point Nintendo at least toyed with a CD. It was kind of going to go the Genesis route. It was like, okay, we'll stack this, so it was basically the same body of a Nintendo 64, but it housed a CD-ROM unit. And I think they explored that a little bit and then just said no. But
so in my research, there was a floppy disk drive for it that was released, and it tanked so hard that most of the games were just never released for it. So I believe, and somebody will correct me in the comments, there was only maybe 4 games that were released for it, and they just discontinued it altogether. And that caused even more problems because a lot of developers had started working on games that we're now never going to play on the Nintendo 64 because the floppy disks, they were large size floppy disks that held more than the N64 cartridges did in terms of memory. So they were able to lure some people back in only to be like, no, you know what? We're not doing that. Screw you guys.
Yep. But you did some hunting, and you did a great job because when you eventually kind of come to your out of door price for what you got, just for context, as Mike tells his story, I passed. I was kind of a forced pass. I wasn't allowed to really consider it, but I happened to be a kind of an indoor flea market store, and they had an Odyssey with 10 games, $140. I don't have that. That wasn't, had that been a Jaguar, had that been a few other things, different story entirely. But not the Odyssey. But that was 140. So keep that amount at a highly respected indoor flea market price. It's Mike tells his story. I think it was Crazy Frank's,
which is an excellent name for an indoor flea market, for anything, for any business. Put crazy in front of your name and you have a winning business model, as far as I'm concerned. I would buy anything from Crazy Kelly's.
Yeah, keep that in mind.
Yeah, so I did start looking. So here's the good and bad thing of what I found. There's a big market for Nintendo 64 stuff out there, which means there's a lot of places you can get games, consoles, accessories. The downside is they're not always cheap in the price points. I came across, I believe it is, what was it? Clay Fighters, the Sculptor's Cut, which is apparently the rarest game for Nintendo 64. It was released as a rental only game in just a couple of markets. That is going for upwards of around $2,000 on most sites that I came across it. I did come across it though, and that's kind of the double-edged sword of it. I definitely found it, but it's around $2,000 on most sites that I came across it. So that's kind of the weird thing about it is these games are out there. This isn't like, hunting these elusive things. Like I can find the games that I want. It's a question of how much do they want for whoever's selling them and the equipment and everything else. And I think we had mentioned DK Oldies on an older episode. DK Oldies had been earlier this year. They've been around for a long time. I've been aware of them. I never ordered anything from them before. But they had been the talk of kind of retro gaming YouTube earlier this year, not in a positive way. Some people had ordered some stuff that either came broken or dirty when it was supposed to, they had purchased refurbished games or consoles or whatever it might have been, and then got poor customer service, trying to get things replaced and all that kind of stuff. And that sucks. And I've dealt with that myself at games. I've dealt with that myself. But and I think when we did comment on it before, we had both said we never ordered from them. So I have no personal experience. Also, too, you do have to keep in mind that while that does suck for those people, and I'm not saying I don't believe them or anything like that, two different people can have two completely different customer service experiences somewhere. So Kelly had an issue with that games. He contacted them and they were awesome and they got his issue fixed. I've reached out to Games 20 times. One time I got a response and it wasn't even the thing that I asked that they were responding to. I don't know if they sent me the wrong email or just some generic boilerplate thing of something they were getting a lot of complaints about, but it didn't answer my question at all. And that's the only time I've ever been contacted back by them. In fact, I responded to that saying, you didn't answer my question, and they didn't respond to that. So my customer service at Games experience is abysmal. So you can just have different experiences too. It doesn't mean that the bad ones didn't happen or that the good ones didn't happen. Just it's what happens, unfortunately, in our economy and the way that things work. So I wasn't necessarily opposed to it because some people had had bad experiences, and if anything, they've become a big presence on social media. and had been doing a lot of promotions and things like that. So if anything, I was like, let me check them out because maybe I could benefit from this situation. And they might be running some deals and stuff because they want to look like the good guys and do away with some of that negative press that they gotten. And it just so happens when I went on, there was a big Nintendo 64 sale going on. So that really worked out for me. It was totally coincidental, but I was able to pick up one of their bundle packs. Now, to give this some context, my first anniversary, my first marriage anniversary, we've been together for a very long time, but first anniversary of our marriage, my wife's birthday, and Christmas are all within 9 or 10 weeks of each other. So it's a lot in a small period of time. And while I did get her things for each of those or have things planned for each of those, I like to get her something that's kind of fun that she can unwrap on the side as well. So this was perfect because I could get her the console, a couple controllers, and a couple games, then pick up other games and accessories that can go towards those other gift giving things. So this really had me covered if this worked out. This was going to be a great thing. If anything, the real problem is there's not another console that she loves that I can do this again next year. This is kind of only going to work once doing it this way. So but it's great. So while we were preparing for a Halloween special, I'd come across this bundle. I gave Kelly all the details. He let me know that everything sounded really good and that seemed like a really great price, which I will share. Total shipped everything. I ended up paying for my initial order about $250. That was for a console for two controllers. Now they're not original controllers. They are replica controllers. You could get original controllers, but it's an upcharge for that for the original controllers. She's not a collector, and this is primarily for her. Don't get me wrong, I'm getting games for myself as well, but it's primarily for her. She's not a collector. She doesn't care. I got her the replica controller, the third party controllers. Honestly, they look at from what I remember, they look and feel just like the original controllers though, and they play great. So I saved a bunch of money. she doesn't care, so everything worked out there. I got two controllers. The console, it's a refurbished console. And again, based on other people's experiences, I did inspect it pretty well. I didn't totally break down the console, but it is visibly everything is cleaned. Other than a couple of small scuffs, it's the black console. Other than a couple of small scuffs on the edges, which, considering this is an almost 30-year-old piece of plastic, if there wasn't scuffs on there, I wouldn't believe it was an original console to a certain degree. Other than a couple of small scuffs, I even sent Kelly a picture of it when it arrived. Everything looked great. Everything was clearly cleaned out. It came with the jump pack. It came with the cables and the adapter for the AV to HDMI. And also, I got GoldenEye, which is, probably the most known game for it, right? As somebody who's not a Nintendo 64 guy, that's the game you always heard about.
Yep.
So that's the game that you have to get for it.
Yeah, Mario Kart, a couple all the Mario stuff, but GoldenEye in terms of like cool gaming, absolutely.
Yeah, so I got that and another game that she loved. It's a Wave Racer 64 or something like that. Another game that she loved that, looking it up, apparently is another popular game and was a big seller for the console. All of that, the console, two controllers, two games, all of the cables. It came with an HDMI cable, not that we needed another one, but that's nice. Came with a power supply, everything, and it was just under $250 shipped. Comparing that to bundles that I saw on eBay, and Amazon now sells refurbished games and consoles that are way more money than that. The Amazon games, basically any game, you're looking at least like $75 for them for a cleaned by Amazon used game. So considering I got all of that for about $250, it almost seemed too good to be true. So I wanted to order more stuff to make sure that I got, because I knew what games she had and was into. Wanted to make sure I got all those games and two more controllers because the Nintendo 64 has 4 controller ports on there. So I wanted to make sure I got that stuff, but I wanted to get this first. And we are getting a little closer to the holidays, so I was worried about shipping, and I was like, should I have paid more for expedited shipping or anything along those lines? It was here in 2 days, I think, after I ordered it. Now, I am in the same state that DK Oldies is in. So I'm sure that played a big role in that
Can't
as
hurt.
well. Yeah, it definitely didn't hurt it. I'm in the same state as them, but it was here in about 2 days. I opened everything up. Everything looked great. We played it. Everything plays great. I didn't have, there was no troubleshooting involved. There was no issues. So I immediately ordered a couple more games. They were here a day later after I ordered them. And now I've ordered a couple more games and the other two controllers. So to make sure we're covered for birthday and Christmas. So every game that she had, she now has again. And we have 4 controllers. And I ordered some stuff for myself because I'm special and I need to take care of me too. So I ordered some stuff for me too. But she has everything that she could want for it. She's still got to wait a couple weeks for the rest of it, but she has everything that she wanted for it. We had the expansion pack. We have, anything that she could want. And I'm, in it on top of the original 250, I'm another couple hundred maybe in, but that's with 4 controllers and every major game: Mario 64, Mario Kart, Perfect Dark, like all of the big games for it. Compared to, if just for my own, curiosity, I went and priced it out on looking at stuff on eBay, looking at stuff on Amazon, different other retro gaming sites. I'm coming in hundreds of dollars less than it would have cost me on those sites. And everything looks great and plays great.
Yeah, the one thing I didn't mention to you before that I was thinking about now is I went kind of through all my gear downstairs to say, is there anything else that would be good? And the only thing that came to me a little bit later was the Rumble Pack. Might be good to look for that because the Rumble Packs pop into that port that's on the bottom of the controller, snaps into there. You got to load it up with batteries. So controller weighs about 50 pounds when you're done, but it also gives you save state. So
Okay.
for certain games, that's not all bad either. So that maybe as you're looking and playing the long game in terms of gift, another gift can be, hey, got your Rumble Pack, so you can start saving your game.
One thing I was looking at, they have extenders for the controllers. So that's something I was considering as well. I don't know if you've used those, if you have any experience with those.
Yeah. And they're pretty, I mean, it's a, now you had mentioned the connections. Is it a USB controller that goes into an adapter, or does it actually have the Nintendo 64 controller?
No, it's an actual, they're just third party. They're new third party controllers, but they plug directly into the.
Okay. Yeah. It's just a cable that's a male, female of that connector. And those are huge, particularly when you're, because it was awesome that it had four players for a lot of games, but you kind of need to spread out a little bit with 4 players.
Yeah.
And while the cords on the controllers are not super short, you're a little tight without those extenders. But particularly because given my setup, I prefer to keep it up kind of in the grid where I've got it. And the couches and stuff are a pretty good distance away. So the extenders are another, to me, a must have, which again, more gifts down the road. Here's some extenders.
That I think is going to be, so my living room, just so for anybody who doesn't know, I am a doctor and I live in a doctor's office, and my living room, is the way that it's set up is not the best way to set up the furniture in the living room. We have to do it that way though, because the wall that divides the living room and kitchen, the living area of the house used to all be offices. This was never a house. This wasn't like a house that was converted to a doctor's office. It's a doctor's office that somebody converted half of to a house, the previous owner. So the part that's the house, those used to be offices too. And there's like this super thick wall between the living room and what is now the kitchen. And it's because they used to do like x-rays in that room. So it's like a protective shield in that wall, like a lead, whatever. You don't get a good signal through that wall. So because of that, you have to kind of put the couch on one end of the living room and the TV at the other. So the couch is pretty far away from the TV. And it doesn't have to be that way. And people openly question that when they're in there, but it's because of that wall, because we stream everything and Wi-Fi and all that stuff. If you're in front of that wall, there's nothing. You're in a dead zone for those few feet in front of that wall. So It's just what you have to do. So those extenders are going to be a must as we get into the 4-player situations and things like that.
Excellent. So we'll look forward to other reports as you kind of pull in any more games, and welcome to the wonderful world of 64.
Yeah, I played a couple of rounds of GoldenEye with her. GoldenEye's weird. So it is the game that I had the most exposure to, but never really like sat and played it for an extended period of time. It's interesting. I do like it. I also picked up one of the games I picked up that she didn't have previously is The World Is Not Enough, the sequel to GoldenEye. Which is not made by Rare. It was made by another company. Rare lost the license to it. So they took what they were working on and turned that into Perfect Dark, from what I've been reading. And then this other company put out the actual sequel to GoldenEye, but it came out so late in the Nintendo 64's lifespan. And because GoldenEye is such a, Mount Rushmore of Nintendo 64, it's basically ignored. But all the reviews, I haven't played it yet because that's going to be a birthday gift. All the reviews of it, though, say that it's just as good of a game. I don't know if you have any experience with it.
I don't.
It looks really good from the gameplay footage that I've seen. So I'm curious, and that's definitely something I'll report back on as well. And it's on so there was there was a blue and gray cartridge, and DK Oldies had both, so I went with the blue. So to look fancy as well.
There you go. Excellent. Cool. Well, anything else you want to share with the Panda Army before we wrap this one up?
Not too much. I would say, though, there's probably going to be a follow-up episode shortly because I did order these games game only, not fully packaged, because if you get the full like inbox manual ones, the price like quadruples instantly on that stuff. So I went with game only, although and this is another cool thing if you're, more budget conscious. They, even with the game only, they give you options for one that's in really, pristine shape, or one that's got some scratches or writing or anything on it, and they knock money off for that. I went with the ones in good shape since these were gifts. It's not a huge difference in price, but again, just another option to knock another few bucks off. But it's just the cartridge only. I wanted to get something to either put these in or some sort of storage container for them, so the cartridges don't get destroyed with kids running around and all that kind of stuff. So Jimmy, who I do the Brutal Dudes podcast with, had recommended a site where they do reproduction cartridge boxes. But even for like the Nintendo stuff, which came in the cardboard boxes, they're like hard clamshell boxes, but reproduction artwork and everything for them. So I have ordered those for all of the games. So once those arrive, we can do a review of those as well too, and I'll let you guys know what I think of that place.
Do they come with manuals as well, or is it just the storage?
Just the storage with the cover art, but it gives you different options for the cover art, especially in a situation like Nintendo 64. So you can get the regular retail, the horizontal boxes, but the hard shell, you can get them for the ones that were reissued under the Player's Choice banner. You can get them with that artwork or the retail box artwork, or they have their own custom artwork, which rearranges everything to make it a uniform vertical look to all the boxes, because the spines on the Nintendo 64 boxes don't match each other. While the horizontal artwork is all kind of similar. If you look at the spines, there's all different designs to the spines. Some say Nintendo 64, some have kind of a uniform look to them, some it's just a logo. I saw one, it was just black for the original game one. So you can choose to have this uniform customized look to it. And I know that these are going on a shelf under our TVs that for her to pull out. So I figured the uniform, and she's not a collector, so it's not about looking as close to the original. So I went with those. And these cases, even with the printed inserts and everything, are pretty cheap. It was only about $1 more than buying just plastic cases to put them in.
Excellent.
So yeah, I have no reason to think my review of these will be bad, but we'll save it for when I get them and can really talk about it.
Cool. Excellent. All right. Well, thanks for sharing. Congratulations. And thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bog Panda.